Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a guy who I feel like I should be wearing clown shoes when I'm talking to him because I've been doing this industry standard thing for maybe a decade or so. This guy's been doing broadcasting since I was sperm, and it's an honor to have him here. Please welcome Chris Myers.
Well, it's good to be here. Wow, what an introduction. We've known each other a few decades. You're a star maker. You're full of great advice. I remember talking to you years ago about some of the comics you brought along, and it's great to see him have success.
I love watching you. I love your voice. It's like I can never get tired of your voice. I noticed your wedding ring, and you've been married for a long time, right?
Yes, over 3 decades. Hasn't all been a bed of roses. It's rocky. It's a ride. But you hang in there if you have a good person and you get along. You hear a lot about marriage, and especially today. And I mean, again, why people get married today is a little bit different than why people got married years ago. But I think
years ago they got married just to get laid.
Yeah. Now you have apps. No, but I think if you're in the long haul, I know I've talked to some friends like, I think it should be like a contract. Every 10 years you just go like, all right, great. But some people...
Lorne Michaels used to say, I believe, and Lorne, don't kill me if I'm wrong here. He said something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, a man should be married to a woman in his 30s, another woman in his 40s, and another woman in his 50s.
Yeah, well, men don't mature differently, But thankfully, sports, I had that to hang on to. It kept me out of trouble. But I do think if you find somebody who's honest, you guys can hang in there. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be disagreements. You fight through it in the long haul. You say, is this person worth it? And they say, are you worth it? And again, if you have children, that's important as well in the process, not to get too serious about it all, because I'm certainly not an expert, and there is a lot of imperfections. But if it works, it works. And some people don't have to be married to have that same kind of relationship. They can just be together and not wear a ring. Wear an earring or something if you want. Whatever works for you.
I was talking to Chris before the show, telling him that I was on the phone with Jeannie Buss and Jay Moore, who are married, and obviously Jay, an actor, comedian, and Jeannie, the owner, one of the owners of the Lakers. And I asked them this question, and I'll ask you the same question.
Okay.
This is something that's a mystery in life to me. At this age, it's a mystery to me. Let's pretend we take a cross-section of 100 days of your life, and 99 of those days are wonderful, happy, great. But yet one day in that 100, whether it was day 27, day 63, day 91, is a day. The thing that I always can't figure out in the mystery is, why isn't one bad day equal to one good day? Why does one bad day almost overshadow as many as a third of your happy days? Why do you think that is?
Well, I think for one, when does that bad day happen? If it happens after 10 good days, you build up a little, I think we're going to be okay. But it does seem out of proportion because I think you get comfortable. I think you get spoiled. Hey, this is a wonderful ride. No, it isn't. You hit a bump, you're thrown around. It's like, that's very extreme to where we were in that relationship. That would be my view. But I think ultimately, as far as how bad is it bad enough to bail? That's the question. That's what you ultimately, when you're dating, you're not sure, when you decide your marriage, this is the right kind of person, or a long-term relationship, that takes on a different meaning, but you both have to be in that mindset. Or that one day you're looking for an out. Oh, great. It's not what I thought it would be. I'm out of here. So I think that's up to the people and how involved and how they look at that day or those days. It's a good question. I really thought of it that way. I just I'm along for the ride,
I've heard many different answers. One, from my sons and partially from Jay as well, that, we're sort of programmed and we're wired to complicate winning and to have bad things happen and to be more cautious and more, think more about the things that are bad that are going to happen. And that's something genetically that's inside us that used to protect us probably from dinosaurs or dangers or things like that. That better to be tight and overcautious and thinking about the negative things that can happen than thinking about the positive things. And then Jeannie Buss, what she said was just fascinating. She says, oh, the reason why one negative day takes up so many positive days for me is because I'm thinking every day and strategizing of how I can make it so that never happens again.
Oh, that's good. No, I like that. My thing is every night's the Super Bowl. It's kind of a corny slogan I've approached my job with and kind of my life with. But I'll equate it to what Martina Navratilova, and maybe others have said it when I interviewed a great tennis player. And in her later years, when she said when the losing means more to me than the winning, then I know it's time for me to get out. This from one of the most successful tennis players, in the history of the sport. And so I just relate that a little bit to that, because if you're in terms of a relationship, because your life can be that way, and I sometimes struggle with that. Hey, life's good, and one bad thing happens, one difficult, and it depends on it's like, my life, where's it go? What have I done? I'm a failure, whatever. It's like you can't fall into that. You're better off. I'd rather be an optimist about everything and be wrong at the end than be a pessimist and be right and live that way.
I agree. And I have to tell you this one thing that I've never told on the air, but I think about when I see the wedding ring and that you've been married over 30 years. I ran into this couple at the market, and they were an elderly couple. And I said, how long you been married? And they said 50 years. And I said, oh, that's amazing. What's the secret to your success? And the woman leans over right away without missing a beat. She says, oh, that's easy. We've only had one argument in 50 years. And then somebody taps her on the shoulder and she turns in the other direction and walks a few steps that way. And now it's just me and the old guy. And he looks both ways to make sure that she won't hear him. And he leans into me and he says, yeah, same fucking argument every day.
I love, they're a little outdated, but any marriage jokes, you go back to the great comics of all time, they still work, just in different ways.
So I have so many things to talk to you about, but I think before we get into the sports stuff and then your career, I think one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, which you'll probably jump over the thing and strangle me, is that you're one of the few people I know in life that just has gotten the shit kicked out of you personally. And you get married, you raise a family, and I don't want to get too emotional here, but the circle of life is supposed to be that the father and mother leave this earth plane first, and then your children leave next, and their children leave next. But occasionally we lose somebody who's younger than us. And that's the case with your son. And I look at your career and I look at what you're doing and what you've done, and I just look at the timeline. I look at what you do. I looked at the work, and I just don't see any difference. I don't see any change in how you go about your work, the professionalism, the job. It just seems like you just always get better and better and better. And I just thought maybe if you wanted to, you could let the audience know how the is it possible to keep your other children stabilized and look, this is something that happened, and we're not going to love you any less, and we're going to celebrate this person's life, and we're not going to fall apart as a family? How do you keep your marriage together when you both are grieving, and you grieve in different ways, which aren't exactly always acceptable to the other person? And your employers who pay you and count on you to be an extraordinary broadcaster like you are every time, and no matter what happens to you, they still know that you have a job to do. How do you do it? How did you do it? And how do you, how do you persevere over that kind of like adversity?
Well, there's a lot of layers to that, and it's obviously it never leaves you. It's part of you in a way, in a different way. When you lose a son, a 19-year-old he had a lot of my personality, for better or for worse.
It's the age of my son.
Yeah, and it was, it's hard, Barry, to talk about. It was hard, it's hard to think about, because every day you think about it because you miss them and you care about them, but you also feel guilty about certain things. And then there's so much pain. The more you think about how much you miss them, it can cripple you, and you can't function for the rest of the family, your coworkers, your life, to go on. And again, it's such a shock and a jolt. And look, I'm not the only one. I mean, you hear this from a distance about somebody losing a child, and you just think it's the worst, and it is. And then when it happens to you, you don't know how to feel, and you go through all those emotions. You can quit, you can bail, you can blame other people, you can go off the deep end with drugs or alcohol. But ultimately, I think other people. I had people in my life, and there was some counseling, but people that I knew that were very supportive. And you have to handle it in your own way. And that's one thing within the family. Right away you decide, hey, we're going to have days when we want to talk about it, and there's going to be days when we don't. We have to respect each other's space. But you just, oh boy, there's always this level of sadness and loss just below the surface that's always there. And again, as you said, look, you lose a parent, you lose somebody whose time, and you realize there is no time. And ultimately, I'll cut through all of the detail because, again, Fox Sports was tremendously supportive, as were all the people in the sports world, former ESPN workers, athletes who called commissioners of sports, team owners, just to be there, to know that people were there if you needed them. But ultimately, it was, you're thankful for the time you had, and you hope in some form, whatever your faith you believe in, that you're going to see or reconnect with them again. And that's really, at least for me, that was the best way that I could cope. And I've always been a guy, and my family knew this, that I love my job, and sometimes a workaholic, whatever you want to call it, overused word, but because I was in sports and I liked what I did, it was kind of a hobby and a job. So when I stopped that after losing Christopher, my son, and we all stopped, the world stopped for us. It was just a time to let it soak in. There's no timetable. Everybody grieves differently. Everybody accepts things differently. I felt the important thing was, and he was a big sports fan, liked what I did. I think he'd come along with me on some football games when I called some games or some interviews and doing radio, and some certain athletes and entertainers that he got to meet. I think you had to go on, and the family, that was the way we could rebuild ourselves, at least on the outside. And inside, you're still working it out, and we always will. That's the best way I can summarize it.
I have this thing that I say to myself, and I say to other people, maybe it's not, always appropriate, but I always say, like, when they're at their lowest point, or I'm at my lowest point, I think to myself, okay, let's And I do this in every part of life and business and every situation that I'm in. I visualize reversing roles. So as I'm doing this interview, as I'm asking questions, I'm reversing the roles. And how would I feel if somebody asked me that question?
About your children.
And if I felt a level of safety and comfort with the person, I would ask it. And I feel like I have that level of safety and comfort with you. And I've
No,
al-
and
I've-
you do. Not a lot of people would want to ask that, Barry. But I think it is important. And I mean, there was a time where I couldn't talk about it. It's been a few years now, but I think it's important for anybody who sees this, and for you, who have kids, that if in some small way that lets people know that you're going to be okay. It's going to be different, but you're going to survive. You're going to make it, and you owe it to the people around you and to yourself, I think, to go forward, as opposed to the alternative. And you just triggered the thought, too, not to interrupt you, but John Wooden, the great UCLA coach, he was a great teacher of men, not only talent, but
the best. I got my sons the pyramid frame, and they still have.
Yeah.
Those.
And he's almost like he was like a Mother Teresa of sports, right? He had quotes like Lincoln. But I did his last interview. He was 99 years old, and I did the Wooden Awards and got to know him a little bit. He met my wife and son, and I had this before I lost my son. But I was doing a radio interview, and he said, I said, Coach, you're good. I'd call him directly. Didn't have any booking people. He was in Encino, and we're doing the show in Sherman Oaks, and he didn't want to come down. I said, that's all right, we'll do it on the phone. He said, yeah, I'm not feeling real well. I said, well, do you want to postpone? He goes, no, let's go ahead and do it. And it was soon after he passed away, but I didn't realize that he was that close, but obviously at 99. But I remember asking him if he feared death, which is kind of one of those questions. But at 99, he had a couple other instances in his life where he possibly could have lost his life. I believe one was in the Navy, and there was one other situation. And he was very thoughtful about it and just simply said, I'm paraphrasing, but it was not really, because whatever's next will be probably better than this, and this life hasn't been all that bad. It was kind of a simple phrase that I hung on to in a dark hour a little bit about my life and in tough losses. But here's a guy who's seen it all and lived to be 99, and I think at that point, you're grateful for the time you had, which brings me back to my original thought.
Yeah, and so when I talked about the reversing the roles, I not just like this, but like if somebody lost somebody close to them, and they're crying or they're despondent, and if I have their ear and they do feel safe with me, I will always say the same thing. Reverse roles. Let's pretend that they're here down on earth and you're up there and you're looking down and seeing that person crying, despondent, out of sorts, and you can come down for 5 minutes and say something to that person. What would you say? And there isn't anyone that doesn't say something of this fact. They'd say, well, I'd look them in the eye and say, hey, listen, I love you. Celebrate my life. Don't cry. Don't be upset. Don't spend 1 second hurting about me. We had a great time together. We love each other. And let's hold on to the great stuff. And let's not grieve anymore. I know it's a natural process, but I'm telling you, looking above from the heavens and down, I'm telling you, it's time that can be spent in other ways. And I'm good. I'm good up here. So just
you hope
know
they're
that.
good. That's how you handle. I mean, I think that's what, and that's true, because that's what you always say. That's what they would want. That's what they would have wanted. The hard, real day-to-day life of that as a parent is, especially when son's 19, is going to college and he's got his whole life ahead of him. Your life, again, not to be selfish, but our life as parents, where now it's about them. It's whatever they're going to need, whatever they're going to want. You're going to want to share their life. You want to watch them grow old and get married, have kids, whatever they want to do, pursue a career, and all of that's gone for that child. And it's painful because once that person, at least from my view as a parent, when he's born, your life it has to change. Otherwise, you're doing a lot for them. It's all about them. Even though your job, you want to put them in a good school, you want to live in a good neighborhood, you want to make sure they can have the kind of things that they need to grow up safe and enjoy the world. And there was a lot of that. I mean, the path was going well. There, again, like any kid, there's going to be some rough spots, but that's the hard thing, to say that that's gone, And so now you do. You think a lot at night about at this age where he would have been or what he would have said, and that's the hard part.
And I hope you don't mind me switching gears to the adversity in your profession outside of what we're talking about. Like, you're in a very high pressure job, which requires enormous preparation. And you're live. People talk about Saturday Night Live. Oh, how difficult that is. And it is difficult. But people don't realize that the majority of all your wow moments are live.
Yeah.
It could be argued, Chris, that in your career, the things that you pre-tape and tape are the least monumental and impactful things of your entire career. But the things that you do live are the things that people remember the most. And even if it's an interview that's taped, it still was live when you were doing it, and they're not like you're not changing your questions and okay, let's
Editing,
do this and whatever.
Live to tape, right?
Yeah, live to tape, which means that it just goes in regular time and then it's on. And so I think about this a lot, and when you're live as a broadcaster, yes, you have the preparation and the bullet points, but you're not, from what I know, for most of the things that you do, you're not on teleprompter.
No, unless you're in the studio.
Yeah.
And even then, sometimes you're not. Yeah.
And so for those of you who don't know, when I talk about teleprompter, it's not when you're doing things in studio, it's not like you'll see at a live event when there's a big 100-foot screen and the words are going down, and it's the camera, it's in the camera. It's the weirdest thing. You can see the words in the camera, but the words don't come.
They have them at the Oscars, right?
Yeah.
Right? All the awards show. But sports is, especially calling a game, you can't have that.
You can't have that. So you're just, it's like, and so your mind, you have the bullet points, but then your mind has to say the things right there, like it's split second, and it's just going and going, and it's incredible. And so I thought to myself, this guy's done everything. There isn't anything you haven't done. It's crazy. From the multiple Super Bowls and World Series to every sport you can imagine, NASCAR to probably fishing to the Olympics to
the Westminster Kennel Club
the
Dog
Kennel
Show.
Club Dog Show. Right. Like, you've done every incarnation of everything. What's the most adversity you faced professionally? Like, is there a time when you've been on a big Super Bowl and you come out on your first thing and you flub a line and you're like, do you get in your head oh my God, I can't believe 100 million people and I f***ed up that line. They're going to remember that for the rest of my life, that I f***ed up the line or whatever. Or are you the kind of guy that's just you're ironclad, nothing professionally, nothing affects, imagine like sometimes you're on a show and people don't understand this, but you're on a show and there's other personalities on the show. And there might be somebody on the show that doesn't like you. There might be somebody on the show that wants to f with you, but not let you know that they're fucking with you, but they're fucking with you. There might be somebody before you go on that says, hey, listen, man, listen, I know that last show you did was kind of shit, so maybe you can put it together the show and whatever.
Yeah.
So like, what are the things that create the most adversity in your job to overcome?
Well, I first go back to as a kid growing up in a big family with not a lot of money, and a dream to be sports. Homework, wanted to get good grades, you got to be a success, whatever. It was my driven little personality. But sports was kind of an escape to me, which was fun. And then it became a career, and at different layers from ESPN to Fox and doing all that. So I have this ability, and it's just kind of a trained thing of compartmentalizing and focus that, especially when I know I'm on and I'm live, I mean, the world can be crumbling around me, but I'm going to deliver the information, report on what I saw. And it took, years of doing radio as a teenager, and then, local live shots for the TV station, doing weekend sports before getting to the network level and being live at Super Bowls and World Series and things like that. So, but I did have a moment, the first Super Bowl, Troy Aikman, Joe Buck up in the booth, Pam Oliver's on the other side. It was the Patriots-Eagles, the first time they met, early 2000s. And I had done a lot of big events already, but never a Super Bowl. It's one of the reasons it was great going to Fox Sports and making the transition to be part of the network broadcast. And they said, hey, you're going to interview the versatile Troy Brown of the Patriots, right? Punt returner, special teams guy. He'll do a live interview right before the kick. And, then we'll throw it over the other sideline. So anyway, I see him in warmups. They're counting me down. It's got to be within 90 seconds, the whole thing with pre-kick, the anthem. I mean, all the 100 million people watching. And so I said to Troy, he looked a little like, fired up for the game. And I said, hey, right before we go on, the producer, I said, don't be nervous. I said, there's a couple of questions. You can roll through it. I know you got a game to play, and there'll be 100 million people watching, but don't worry. And I shouldn't have said that, because in my mind, that's what I remembered. I'm thinking, wow, all the things you've done, Chris, it's 100 million people here. So that Joe Buck threw, let's go down to the field, and Chris Myers. And I freeze, and I hear the producer, Chris, go, we're live. And even Troy Brown is looking at me like, you're going to ask a question. So he's with his shoe, he's tapping me like, aren't you going to ask something? You're going to go? It felt like 10 minutes for me. It was probably 10 seconds. I don't know, at the moment. But they're yelling at me, and I just froze with that many. So it was just a late start to get to it. So the audience might not know, but it reminded me of what I started out at doing live TV, is that, you just can't think of all the people watching. You have to think of it, that one person, that you're connecting to, or the one person I'm interviewing. That's what I usually would do. That's why, I don't know why, because the magnitude, when they say the Super Bowl, the players say it's just another game. It's not just another game. And so that was kind of a stumbling moment that thankfully the audience really couldn't tell.
And when you watched it afterwards on video, was it noticeable?
Not really. No, most people.
Now, after that happened, like for instance, last night we watched the basketball game, the Golden State game, and like probably the best athlete on the team doesn't play, Jonathan Kuminga. And you realize, okay, well, why isn't he playing him? Is he not playing him because something happened and he lost confidence in him for that particular thing? He's got to get the confidence back. When you're in the middle of the Super Bowl, does the producer cut one of your segments? Because
good question. Yeah, no, thankfully I had a really good producer who was like, hey man, Chris, I hope you're okay. Like, no, I'm good. I'll be good from here. And after that, he was cool, and we worked a lot of other Super Bowls together, including the great Tom Brady comeback, against the Falcons, where we were the first ones to get to him through the crowd, and after the overtime, and then the live. So that, and that was just a reminder for me. And you get, it's like a ball player, you AA, AAA, whether you're local TV, and I'm not knocking any of that. It's just you get to the top. You gotta be, on your game. I mean, and if I have stumbled on a few other sideline reports, and that's fitting that in those World Series situation, The important thing is, as long as you catch it and recover it and correct yourself, people are okay with that. It's when you don't do that and you go right
but
through
it didn't shake your confidence for the rest of the Super Bowl.
No, because
And what's fascinating also is what people don't realize is also your teammates can really be essential in helping you. Your producer was like, "Hey, listen, it's all good."
He wasn't, instead of, "Hey, you killed us on," right? Yeah, you killed us on time, or you screwed up.
Now, could you have said to them? Well, it would have been lying.
Yeah.
Could you have said like, "Hey, listen, man, nothing came on until like 10 seconds."
I could have, we could use that excuse. And normally in my situation, I'll make light of if I kind of stumble through, and sometimes you lose your thought, but you come up with a question till you get to the next thought if you're live, and those situations like post-game celebrations and things like that. But that was what. That was one. It was just kind of no way out. And again, to me, it was like the clock was slowly ticking, and I never really had stage fright or whatever you want to call it. But that was one thing that again, you learn a lesson. And you're right, you get the support of people. There have been a few other little things along the way, but you catch them and you correct them. But live, that's why I'm in it. And I think it's almost like I'm a fan of comedians. I know you've worked that live audience is kind of a great thing. And so even if you're not seeing or hearing them, being live, it puts enough pressure on that I think, at least for me, you got to deliver.
Hey everybody, it's Barry Katz, and I wanted to talk to you about Blueprint for Success. This is a community that I put together during the pandemic to help all artists of every walk of life in the entertainment business. No matter where you are in that part of this journey, it's designed to help you. There are podcasts with people that will inspire you, like Kevin Hart, Judd Apatow, Bill Burr, that you can't find anywhere else but on this program that I've interviewed, to times where we get to talk to executives in the business that you would never have access to tell you what you need to hear and to answer your questions, to all sorts of different videos and master classes designed to help you get to the promised land. That's what the Blueprint for Success is. Doesn't matter whether you want to be a stand-up comedian, a sketch performer, a podcaster, an actor, an actress, director, writer, social media person, whatever you want to be. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've had the honor and been humbled to represent people like Chappelle, Wanda Sykes, Louis C.K., Dane Cook, and probably over 20 other people who went from a studio apartment to being a multi-millionaire and a household name. And I want that for you, and I wanted to take the time with this program to be able to help you on your way there, to get there and to heighten and increase the trajectory of your career. Blueprint for Success is the way to go. I'm proud to be a part of this program, and I'd be proud to have you to be a part of it too.
Let's look at the victories, okay? So another thing that I don't understand the process of how it works, and maybe you can tell the audience, because nobody knows this. So you mentioned, let's just say something you mentioned, the Super Bowl where Tom Brady came back from 28-3 to beat the Atlanta Falcons and Matt Ryan. So the game ends, and your assignment, your assignment from many weeks before is you're going to go on the field and find the winning quarterback and do the interview.
Right.
And there's 500 people coming from all sides to the middle, and you're eye level with that crowd. You're not hovering above seeing where he is. Oh, he's at the hash mark at the 43-yard line. So your assignment is to interview the quarterback when 500 people are there. Now, I'm going to ask you a few yes or no questions. Number one, do they tell the quarterback before the game, Matt Ryan and Tom Brady, after the game, you have one interview right away?
Not necessarily. No.
So they don't know that they have to talk to you first.
Right. They only know they're going to set up the stage and do the trophy presentation.
So they don't. So they anybody who comes to them on the field,
they
they could talk to whoever they wanted.
Right.
And there's not millions, hundreds of media people from every different network.
Well, and what made that unique, it was the first overtime Super Bowl. So usually as the network broadcast, I might have a security guy or a PR rep there, but as you said, the flood of people. So they let a certain amount of people down to the field as the game is normally about to end after 4 quarters. And then there's also international media and there's other. So they let them all down. And usually they don't let them all down. They let it because it went to overtime. They had extra media, even those that were supposed to be like in the next wave to go down and talk to other players and interviews. So it was an overload of people.
I don't want to belabor this, but I think it's important to understand. So why wouldn't the league instruct the coaches and players, listen, the first interview you do, because we're doing this on Fox, is got to be a Fox interview. I don't want the NBC person coming up to you after the game when we're doing the Fox broadcast and they paid $1 billion.
Right.
But they don't tell them that.
Yeah, the NFL has improved on that since in terms of not so much telling them, but cooperating to make sure that other people don't get down to the field.
All right, so how do you get to Tom Brady in the middle of the field with your camera person and in your mic? So there's got to be a cameraman and a sound person.
Yeah, I lost them in the shuffle. They ended up having to go with an overhead camera because there were so many. But you fight like hell. It was like a salmon going upstream.
So you lost them.
So, yeah, and the producer's in my ear. And here's the important thing about it, too, Barry. I think it's so valuable. You want to be respectful and sensitive because sometimes you're interviewing a losing coach or a losing player, but you don't do them immediately. But when somebody wins, especially a game like that, the sooner you can get to them to give the raw emotion, it's almost my questions aren't as important as their answer with the excitement and the joy of what just happened. And so it's a if they wait a while, if you wait a while, things slow down. I think you lose something. So you're fighting through the crowd. I had a producer with me. He got bumped, trampled. I had a security guy. he got knocked down. I had a league representative to help me get, normally they'd come up and say, hey, this is Fox. He got knocked out. It was crowded. Elbows got hit with a camera. I literally had black and blue marks from fighting. And you could watch because our director, the same producer, what I told you about before, Richie Zions, who's doing the Super Bowl, he's on the overhead camera. And I can hear Joe Buck and Troy Aikman saying, hey, we're going to hear, it's Chris Myers trying to get to Tom Brady. And you can kind of watch the maneuvering, which I watched later, going through it. It wasn't funny. So I finally get to him, okay? And think about it. This guy's exhausted. This was also after Deflategate. He had an illness in his family. He just went through an overtime game that looked like they were going to get blown out, which was amazing to be on that sideline and experience their calm and confidence being down 28-3. But anyway, players are hugging each other. I mean, there's a euphoria for the Patriot side of things, along with the overflow pouring of media. And I get to him. And I'm like, Tom.
How many times had you interviewed him before?
Well, we had a production meeting with him the Friday before the game, and that's where we sit in with Joe and Troy, and we talk to him, and he talks to us about the game without cameras. And so I had met him a few other times and done some interviews, but not a lot.
But you were a familiar face.
Familiar face to him, yes. Not as familiar as many. But anyway, I just said, hey, Tom, but here's the hard part. I was like, hey, do you have can we do this interview? Do you have a minute? He goes, well, I'm really, and so the producer's like, get him. So I was like, we're live with Tom Brady on Fox. And I kind of jumped him a little bit. And thankfully, he was gracious and played along. And I said, Tom, an amazing comeback. And the 3 questions, I forget that I were rapid fire in there. But at least you saw you could feel his raw emotion and sense of
when you're in a situation like that, do you help the player and the situation by saying, hey, Tom, I just got 3 quick questions for you?
Yeah, sometimes you do help. Yeah, because I know he was probably going to walk away if I kept talking. If he could walk, there were people around him. But the producer, thankfully, was saying, because he's like, as I'm fighting, he's like, can we get to him? I was like, we're going to get him. But he goes, I don't have your cameraman. He said, I'll take the overhead camera, which they started out until our cameraman.
And did you tell Tom this is where the camera is?
No, we just talked. And then they eventually kind of got they got the shot. But the important thing was you could feel how drained he was, but also how relieved and happy, and how it was for a guy who had won so much. This was another Super Bowl, another way to win a Super Bowl. They've had a lot of close ones, but this was different, being down, almost getting blown out, almost being embarrassed. And then, of course, the redemption with Deflategate and some other emotion.
Do you get a bonus check for doing that?
No,
Do they give you a tip or anything? Does it help you get the gig the next time? Like, does somebody give you a raise after something like that?
No, nothing. It's part of the job. I will say the NFL, though, it has since that time, a few years ago, perfected a little bit more of getting support so you can get to whether they tell them before or not. They at least have people in place to say, hey, make sure you do the network broadcast interview first. It was one of those crazy. I had a few crazy ones. When the Red Sox won the World Series, it broke through after the curse of 80+ years. And
I was there.
Getting Johnny Damon and the idiots won the cowboy up, that whole thing. That was kind of a cool moment, being in the middle of all that. Anyway, some good moments.
You always have this philosophy that I think is really important for every artist. And I want to make sure I get it right, so I wrote it down here. Treat a regular guy like a famous person, and treat a famous person like a regular guy.
Yes, very important to me.
Who taught you that, or you just learned it on your own?
Well, when one of your first interviews as a teenager trying to do radio in Miami at 16 is Muhammad Ali, in a room with, seasoned writers, the hats, the cigar smoke, the press, and the magnitude of that moment stuck with me. And so after that, and then I saw it in a movie. I think it was called Perfect with John Travolta. It was in a whole jazzercise
I think
era.
the movie was far from perfect.
Yeah, it was. The movie bombed, but the line was in there. I think Travolta played a rock and roll journalist. Jamie Lee Curtis was in it, as a kid. And anyway, but there was something but that line. So it stuck with me, because after that interview with Ali, I was like, I don't want to ever be intimidated. I think if you do that, if you treat a famous person like a regular person, I think you're not intimidated by anybody. And the other way around, you don't overlook anybody who may not be famous but may have a great story to tell or be very important to your story or covering something. And that has worked well with me, and it's been a real thing for all of my years when I was struggling to get a certain level in the business to then getting to the network level. And it's worked in friendships too. I think it's how I struck up the unique, odd friendship of 30-something years with Bill Murray and the Murray brothers and
who
some
does
other
the forward in your book.
Yes, he's a very interesting character of a human being. Very smart, along with being funny. Most funny people really are. They have, Johnny Carson was one of my idols too, so he was very well read. But anyway, yes, that line, I had to use that. So, and it also helped people that helped me do my job. People that weren't famous would help me get to Barry Bonds when he signed for leaving the Pirates to the Giants. So I would get the scoop and then treat Barry. I think sometimes with the stars, if you fall in front of them and pretend oh, well, you're so great, they don't want to hear that. Sometimes they want to be treated like a regular person. It works.
1,
2,
3, 4, 5, 6.
6 degrees of separation.
6 degrees of separation. I'm going to mention some names.
Oh, okay.
And I want you to come up with whatever you want. It could be a sentence. It could be a thought. It could be a quick story.
Oh, good. This is fun.
It could be one word. It could be anything.
Barry's Game Show. All right.
All right. Barry's Game Show.
I like industry, the gold standard. You got the gold lettering there. I know you're trying. It's subliminal
messaging.
It's
kind of like fire in there.
So,
the and gold, too. Yeah, I know. You are the gold standard.
Well, thanks.
All right. Adam Sandler.
Really nice guy, funny guy, doesn't get the risk, made a lot of money doing what he loves to do, includes his friends in the business, enjoy being around. It was nice to my son, who we talked about, who passed away, invited us over, and I'll never forget that. So he means a lot to me.
O.J. Simpson.
Ooh, terrible human being, literally got away with murder. I tried to be impartial when I did that first live interview. I got access to research that even the jury didn't have, and there's no way he didn't do it. It's just whether he had help or not.
Do you think he had help?
He could have had help in cleaning things up, hiding evidence. I mean, when one of the defense lawyers who got him off, so to speak, or cleared him, said, "I wouldn't do the interview with him. He's nothing but bad news." It's like that should be a tip. But hands down guilty, and I think suffered for it afterwards in his living years.
As well you should.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm still shocked that the evidence and how they spun things in a courtroom where justice was not done to the family at the time. But things have a way. Karma caught up with him.
Charles Barkley.
Interviewed him as a player. Knew he was going to be. I didn't know he wanted to go into the entertainment media industry like he ended up doing, but was one of my favorite people. And mentions some stories about him in the book. There's a very kind side of him. We disagree on a lot of things, politically, basketball-wise, but a really good-hearted guy. And will always have something to say about something, even if it's worth nothing. I think he'd like that one.
J.J. Redick.
Interesting transition. Didn't think it would work. I grew up a big Laker fan. I mean, I go back, and boy, that was some great years. Magic, and got to interview, Kobe and Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, one of the great, so my Laker as a fan, and then being able to do that was a great reward in the business. But I think the Luka trade has made it work, and I think they'll be successful.
I would be remiss if I didn't just take a little pause and just make a statement and have you comment on it.
Okay.
There are certain things in life that I don't understand, and certain things in sports I don't understand. And I know these people are experts, but I want you to let me get this thought out, and I want you to comment on your opinion on what happened.
Okay.
So the Luka Doncic trade. Okay. So, firstly, obviously, no one has the memos of the ownership in Dallas and their desire not to pay $312 million, or whatever it is, when another team like the Lakers will have to pay $240 million or whatever. But regardless, the trade. So let's just pretend that they didn't want to spend the money. It has nothing to do with money. It's nothing to do with anything except money. They say to Nico Harrison, make the trade. Get us the best deal possible. They don't say to Nico Harrison, make the trade, get us the shittest deal possible. Whereas the Knicks, they trade for Mikal Bridges. They give up 5 number 1 picks, 4 unprotected. Okay? For Luka Doncic, they don't even get 1 first-round pick. They don't get Austin Reeves. They get one other player who's a good player with Anthony Davis.
Yeah, not reliable.
I want to know your opinion as a person in this business for over 3 decades. Am I? They don't call any other teams. They don't try to get the best deal. Like, what am I missing, Chris? Like, tell me what you know inside your information that I'm missing, and how anybody in their right mind, even if the owner says, hey, you want your money? You want to keep your job? Trade Luka. And I got a family. I got to pay my bills. I'll do it. But get the best deal. The owner doesn't say, do the trade and get the shittiest deal. Like, what happened? Tell me what happened.
Well, no, I don't think there's any mystery. Again, I haven't covered the NBA more recently because with the Fox broadcast, that hasn't been in my assignment. But after having covered it for years, I, again, didn't have any insight. It seems like, and I think it was the reaction of everybody at the time in the league, is like, what are we missing here? What happened? Because they absolutely, and you hit on it. I get you don't want a guy if it's money. You heard that, his work ethic, and there were a lot of other little excuses that filtered out about Luka that don't seem to be a problem with his new team. But you could have got more. If I was the GM of the Mavericks, or if I was anybody in that, because their fans have turned on them, rightfully so. It was one of the stupidest trades in the history of any sport. and he's a top 5 player. I would come out and say, hey, yeah, we called every team in the league. Just we tried. We looked, and even then, if I'm the owner and I want to dump the guy I don't want to pay, I would have waited it out a little bit longer. There would have been some desperate move somewhere with some other owner or some team. I don't get it either. You're not missing any. I mean, they missed. The Mavericks missed, unless there's something beneath the story where there was something personal, and I don't want to.
And obviously,
start a rumor.
I don't want to go one way or the other with Nico Harrison, but I mean, if somebody is trying to convince me that he made that move without the ownership blessing it.
Oh no, the owner had to be.
But he's taking the complete fall. Fire him. But they're not saying get rid of the owner.
Yeah.
They're saying fire him.
But they're also mad at the franchise. They're holding it against, which I as a fan I would be too, and that's the hard part about being a fan. But I'm with you, and it seems to get where. And look, for the NBA, if we're going to look at it.
It's great for the NBA.
It was a big,
but also, like, he goes in these press conferences, he says, "Hey, listen, defense wins championships." Well, hey, motherfucker, the last time I checked, Dallas, the last third of the season last year, was number 2 in defense, and in the NBA Finals, they held the Celtics to 108 point something points a game. They lost, but that would have made them like a top 4 defensive team in the league if they did what they did in the thing. So I just don't get it. But I just wanted to ask your opinion, and I appreciate it. And,
that's the best I can do. And that the Mavericks blew it is basically, and the Lakers benefited from stupidity.
Last 6 degrees of separation question. Your interview with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid after the Super Bowl win.
Yeah, it was different than the Tom Brady. It was their first Super Bowl that they won together with the Chiefs, and couldn't find Mahomes in this case. Again, we're running. It wasn't quite the crowd. I said things had improved, but I think you got to be respectful sometimes. If a quarterback is going to the other quarterback to wish him luck or has a family member there, you don't usually interfere. But again, you want that raw reaction. So the Chiefs, remember that was that first Super Bowl run with this group where they were down double digits throughout the playoffs. And again, they came back against the 49ers and that supposed great defense from down in the second half. And Mahomes was as calm as cool. And who would know that he would go on and they would go on to have the success that they've had since. But I run to get Mahomes, but I see Andy Reid. And so the producer's like, well, get Andy Reid first. It's his finally he gets a Super Bowl. So as I get to Andy Reid, I'm asking him, and he's calm, and he's one word, but you want the player emotion. And he was excited, but he was Andy Reid, the coach. His wife comes over of all these years, who's they've been through a lot, and she kind of moves into the picture there without me really wanting to. And I couldn't remember her name. I bet I knew it, but the producer's like, well, mention. So I get her just to get a comment. And then Mahomes comes running over. So this is one that worked out. He runs over to kind of hug Andy Reid, and then I get the microphone into him. So it's like an All in the Family episode here with the quarterback, and really Mahomes is the one you wanted to spend time with. But and again, they didn't say anything of great import except you're letting the viewers see the excitement and the joy of what there was a key moment in there about a certain pass and overcoming the point deficit. But the players often in that moment too, they're just so excited that they roll over the details, and they, unless you get them separately, which is why you do interviews afterwards or have the stage. But it was a cool moment for a franchise that hadn't been won a Super Bowl in so many years, and Andy Reid's first, and now it's become old hat for them. They've become they've surpassed the Cowboys in terms of popularity and ratings and things like that. And, the America's Team label, you'll get an argument, but yeah, that was a fun moment.
One of my favorite kinds of interviews, to me, is because it's the most challenging for the sportscaster. Tell us your favorite interview of somebody who was defeated. In other words, a player or a boxer or somebody who lost, or a coach who lost, and that interview right after. What's your favorite one, and how did it go?
Well, one was Mike McCarthy with the Packers when they had Aaron Rodgers and were up in Seattle, and it was a great Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson comeback. I mean, it looked like the game was in the bag, And you could see the tension on the sideline with Aaron Rodgers and almost the Packers playing it a little too safe. And the Seattle chipped away and then tied the game and then won it in overtime on a quick drive. And so I had in that case the other sideline. Aaron Andrews had one, or Pam Oliver, depending upon who I was working with. And so I had the Packer side. So you give the coach and the team their space, but you get time to go over to the locker room afterwards, and he'll step out. The coach will. This is where the league does require them to talk. And by the way, some coaches have blown us off, and they violated and were reprimanded for it, but they owe it to the audience. But McCarthy comes out of the thing, and I'm rolling. I just said, Coach, it's like, I said, first you're trying to, like, what can you share with us that you told your team? I mean, I didn't say this, but you blew the sizable lead. And he was like, so I'm paraphrasing, but it was like difficult because you could tell he was in shock. He was like blown away. It was like, and he even said, he goes, well, I thought we had the game. Oh, all of a sudden, it's like, can I say that? I'm like, well, you said it. It's, we're going on, and we got through it. At least he was, and I was trying to be sensitive about it, but understand the view of a Packer fan watching. But the most difficult was the Patriots in their perfect season, with when they went all the way to the Super Bowl and the Giants shocked them, upset them, right? They were going to top the Dolphins as the only perfect season with a Super Bowl title. And I had the Patriots sideline that game. I know Randy Moss had a touchdown. I thought, they were going to, they're going to win this. And then the Giants and Eli Manning do their thing. So I have Belichick, who doesn't want to do the interview. And I say to somebody from the league, I'm like, hey, he's required. We can even tape it live to tape, but the audio. And I said, I'll run over to, I knew Randy Moss. So I said, I'll run over and get Randy Moss. And they went, hold on. So Belichick comes out and stooped down, head just kind of unfriendly, obviously upset. Also struck me as, we did the interview, I asked 5 or 6 questions. They were one-word answers. There was a lot to talk about, a catch and this and the details of the game. But he struck me. People thought he was rude. I felt I didn't do a great interview. The boss later said, you asked all the right questions. He was a jerk. But I don't think he was so much a jerk as a guy who just didn't know how to handle losing, that he was used to the Little League. It was like the Little League kid who won all the games and then loses in the world's, their title game and doesn't know how to react. That's kind of how I took it. But that was a different challenge. He did some good media stuff since he's gotten out of the business. It's funny.
Your proudest moment in show business?
Showbiz. Well, still, there's more to come. There's always something. There's a couple. I mean, getting to Tom Brady, the O.J. Simpson interview was proud in the sense that a sports guy doing some journalism in a serious issue about a guy who, literally got away with murder, and it was kind of really breakthrough at the time. But I can honestly say, with all the great moments, and I've covered some really good stories, won an Emmy for a pitcher adopting a player in the jungle after being in an all-star game, and covering the Earthquake World Series and the Olympic bombing in Atlanta, being live in those situations. But they were all, I try to treat every story as a big story. Every night's the Super Bowl. So I would say the proudest moment is having been in the business and experienced not just World Series and Super Bowls, but other unique events, and really meeting and talking to so many interesting people. I know sounds a little corny, but that really is why I still do it, and why I still enjoy it.
And the thing that happened to you that, the biggest disappointment that you had in show business, and how you used it to fuel yourself to the next level?
Well, there was when I was in radio and in college, where I had a little mark on my head where before plastic surgery was as advanced. I mean, I remember a professor saying, hey, you got a good voice and you work hard, but, you'll never get on TV with that, looking like that. And I was like, what? It motivated the heck out of me. So that was an early point where I said, what, even though I like radio and I'm going to get on TV and I'm going to get on a network TV. So that pushed me. I had a chance to cross over into news and be a news anchor at one point and do that type of thing, and it didn't work out. So I wouldn't say it wasn't a disappointment. It just reminded me how much I love sports. So I really haven't had. I mean, there's minor disappointments along the way, Barry, but nothing that I would say. I thought I deserved jobs that I didn't get that somebody else got. But then I thought, well, I got some opportunities that maybe other people deserved more that they didn't get. So I think it kind of evens out.
Last question. What advice do you have for the young person growing up, having a dream, and making reality happen. Anybody, anywhere in the world, how do they do it?
Well, that's when I wrote,
And have the kind of career that you're having.
wrote the book. That's really it's my view, but a lot of sports as an inspiration because as a kid growing up, I had this dream of covering sports instead of playing sports and it seemed like a long shot. But it'll happen. I mean, I really did start with writing the goal of what I wanted to do as a kid on the mirror and seeing it every day, and it pushes you in that direction. Sometimes maybe a little obsessive. But in today's day and age, with social media and teams having their own websites, if you're in sports, there's a channel now for every sport. Find your wheelhouse. Sometimes you don't start out. I started out a little bit behind the scenes to get on in front of the camera. There's a lot of ways to go, but nothing replaces hard work. Passion for what you're doing. Be on time, treat people well, and the rest will happen.
Chris Myers, amazing. Thank you so much. Check out the book. This is one of the legends in our world.
Nice
This is like a Hall of Fame broadcaster, and it's an honor to have you here. Thank you so much, and it's an honor to call you my friend.
Well, known each other a lot of years. Thank you. It's really interesting questions. If you stay at this interview thing, I think you got a shot. It's a whole new career for you.
I don't think there's these lines in my forehead, and I don't think I'm going to make it.
I really did enjoy the conversation, though. Thank you very much.
I did too, brother.
Yeah,
I love
it was
you.
fun.
Thank you.